All right, well, welcome to the third session of our presentations this evening. We will be covering ACT and SAT testing. My name is April Simons. I'm the College and Career Counselor at Zephyrhills High School. I will be covering lots of information. Hopefully I'll be able to catch most of your questions throughout the presentation. But at the end, we will definitely have a question and answer session. But if you do have a question that you are dying to know, you can go ahead and type that into the chat, and we will make sure and get to that question throughout the presentation. All right, so ACT and SAT, what are they? Well, they're college entrance exams. The SAT is the Scholastic Assessment Test, and the ACT is the American College Test. They are required by most institutions of higher education, both for their application process and to help assess the students' college readiness and academic skill. They can also, scoring well can help land you a good spot at a school of your choice, but they can also help you earn merit-based scholarships. So uses of ACT and SAT, of course, they're college entrance or acceptance exams. They can be used for scholarship qualification. They can also be used for concordance scores for graduation requirements here in the state of Florida. All right, so what is the same for ACT and SAT? Well, they're both college entrance exams. There are no penalties for guessing on either test. It is to the benefit of the student to answer every question on the test. You only earn points with correct answers. You do not get penalized or negative points or points taken away for questions that you get wrong. So definitely you want to encourage your student to answer every question. Both of them have curriculum-focused content. You do have score choice that you can send your scores to, say, colleges or universities of your choice for free. There is an optional essay with the ACT. The new digital SAT does not have an essay option, but if you take the paper-based SAT, it does have an essay option. All right, a lot more overview of comparison of the digital SAT and ACT. So the digital SAT is given on the computer. It is still given at a testing location, but it is on a computer. The paper ACT, paper and pencil, it is 2 hours and 55 minutes of testing time, where the digital SAT is now only 2 hours and 14 minutes. So it is a bit of a shorter exam, but still covers the majority of the same content. Accommodations can be applied for each of the tests, ACT or SAT. If your student has a 504 or an IEP, they can apply for accommodations for testing, whether that's additional time, small group, extra breaks, whatever is written in their IEP or 504 can be applied for accommodations for these tests. The structure of the digital SAT is a bit different than the traditional test. It is adaptive, so the second stage of the section is based on the performance during the first stage of the section. So the test is tailored in the second stage to the student. So depending on how they perform during the first section of the test. The paper ACT, of course, is static. It does not change based on students' performance because it is paper. So what is printed in the test is what they will test. For the digital SAT, there are 2 sections with 2 stages each. So reading and writing has a stage 1 and stage 2. Both are 32 minutes with 27 items each. For the math, there are 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2, 35 minutes with 22 items each. For the ACT, there are actually 4 tests. There is an English section, math, reading, and science. And again, there is an optional essay for the ACT. For English, it is a 45-minute test with 75 items. Math is 60 minutes for 60 items. Reading is 35 minutes for 40 items, and science is 35 minutes for 40 items. All right, for the digital SAT, it is on a 1,600 point scoring scale. So you can earn up to 800 points on the reading and writing section and the math section. So a total of 1,600 points. The ACT is based on a 36-point scale. So your highest composite score can be 36 points. It is made up of the 4 tests being up to a 36 on each one of the tests, and then the average of those 4 tests is how you get your composite score. There are no subtests or subscores for the digital SAT, but there are some subscores for the ACT. Score reports on the new digital SAT are available much quicker than in the past. It says they are available days after the exam. So they would have access to their scores on the College Board, on their College Board account. ACT scores are usually available 2 to 4 weeks after the test date. All right, so some additional breakdown. So this is for the reading and writing sections. For the digital SAT, there are 64 minutes divided evenly between 2 stages. That's 54 passage and question sets, 1 short reading passage per question. For the paper ACT, English is 45 minutes and reading is 35 minutes. English has 5 medium-length passages with 15 questions each, and reading has 4 long passages with 10 questions each. So the reading organization on these 2 tests are a bit different. The question organization difficulty increases with each type of question on the digital SAT, yet the question organization is random for the paper ACT. All right, for math and science, for the digital SAT, the math and science are 70 minutes divided between 2 stages of the math and science questions. There are 44 questions, which include about 11 student-produced response questions. The math content has not changed from the paper SAT, but the domains names have been changed. So they will cover content in algebra, advanced math, problem solving and data analysis, geometry and trigonometry. ACT covers a bit different in content areas, preparing for higher math, number and quantity, algebra, functions, geometry and statistics and probability, integrated essential skills and statistics and probability. So with both of the tests, difficulty does increase with each stage, and difficulty increases within the section as the test progresses. Students can use calculators on both the SAT and ACT. The new digital SAT, there is actually a calculator built in to the software program, which is called Blue Book, which is the testing portal that they will be using for digital SAT. So there is a calculator provided through the testing portal. However, students still can use a handheld calculator. So if your student, wants to use a handheld calculator, not the one on the computer, they are still approved to do so. Calculators can be used on the math section only of the ACT. And again, there are approved calculator lists on both College Board's website and the ACT website. All right, so this is a score report. This is the ACT score report. As you can see on the far left-hand side of the screen, A composite score of 21 is what this student received. So that is an average of their scores on each of the 4 test sections. So math, science, English, and reading. And the average of those 4 sections is how they come up with their composite score. For the new digital SAT, this is what the score report looks like. They will get a total score, which is the sum of the reading and writing section and the math section. So reading and writing, this student received a 620 out of 800. For the math section, they received a 500 out of 800. You add those 2 together, they get a total score of 1120. Then down below, it does break down the knowledge and skills, both reading and writing, and how the student did on those areas. All right, for concordance scores. So in the state of Florida, all students for graduation requirements are required to pass 2 tests currently. It is the grade 10 FSA ELA reading test, and then the Algebra 1 EOC, or end of course exam. These 2 tests are required for all students to meet graduation requirements. If they don't pass these specific tests, they can use a substitute test, being the ACT or SAT, in order to meet those graduation testing requirements. So if they choose to take the ACT, they receive at least a 16 or higher on the math section. That can sub in or be a concordance score for the Algebra 1 EOC. For the reading requirement, the grade 10 ELA test, they would need to receive on the ACT an average of their English and reading score to be a 17.5 or higher. If they choose to take the SAT, for the math requirement to be eligible for the Algebra 1 EOC, it would need to be a 420 or higher. To meet the reading requirement, they would need to score at least a 480 or higher. All right, then we have super scoring. So it's a process by which colleges consider your highest section scores across all of the dates that you took either the ACT or the SAT. So instead of confining your score to one particular test date, you can use your highest section score from each date that you took the test and combine those to get your highest possible composite score, which then is called your super score. Some examples of that are here. So super scoring with the SAT. This student took the SAT 3 times, both June, August, and October. In June, their composite or their total score was a 1360. In August, their total score was a 1340. And in October, their total score was a 1360. So just looking at that, you would think, oh, they really haven't improved their score that much. But if they super score, you can see that they have improved their score quite a bit. So using their highest reading score here in blue, being the 720 from the October test date, then using the 690 here in the red color, being a 690 for their math section, which they earned here in the August test date. They combine those 2, their total score is now a 1410, which is considered their super score. For ACT, super scoring works very similar. This student took the ACT both in September and December. The green highlighted areas are the highest section scores. If they add those up and divide by 4 by getting the average of those 4 sections, their super score would then be a 26. Let's say their composite on the September test date was a 25, and their composite on the December test date was a 25. But if they do the super scoring, they would get a composite of a 26. All right, I always get asked, how should my student prepare for the ACT or SAT? The biggest thing is for them to become knowledgeable about the test. They need to understand the timing of the test, the sections, how many questions are in each section, and then the scoring of the test. How are they being scored? That they're not going to get penalized for marking wrong answers, but that they only earn points by getting correct answers. They definitely want to study in advance, be knowledgeable about not only the test, but what kind of content are the different areas going to cover. Definitely take some practice tests. There are full-length practice tests available, both online and in paper form. Lots of online resources, and definitely just practicing, being familiar with the content and how the test is set up is going to be very beneficial to your student. There are some free study guides that schools have available for students. We get sent these either through ACT or through College Board. So they are free to students as long as we have the materials to hand out. Currently, I have the SAT School Day student guides that I've been handing out to students for them to practice and get familiar with how the test is set up, how the questions are set up, the wording of the questions. So these booklets are, little paperback booklets that students can write in and take home for free. So I definitely would encourage your student to either ask their career specialist or their guidance counselor to get one of these guides. There are also several online resources. So through ACT, there is free ACT test prep through the ACT website. Here is the website to get to that. You can also just go to the ACT website and click on test prep, and that will take you to the same link, but free ACT test prep. We also have the official SAT practice with Khan Academy. So you can actually go to your College Board account and you can link to your Khan Academy account, upload any PSAT or SAT scores that you may have, and then you can create a personalized practice program to help you practice the skills that you need in order to get a higher score on the SAT. All right, so when should students start taking the SAT and ACT, and how much does it cost? So usually students start taking the ACT and SAT after completion of their 10th grade year. Some students take it as early as the summer after 10th grade, but the majority of students wait until the fall of 11th grade to start taking their first ACT and SAT. Usually the reason that students wait until after 10th grade is because they would not have had the classes to cover the content that is on the ACT and SAT. So really prior to 10th grade, they just would not be familiar with the content and be able to do the best that they could on those tests because they have not learned that information at that point. ACT is $68 currently, and SAT is $60. These are just for the multiple choice test. These do not include the optional essay portion. If your student does want to sign up for the optional essay portion, there is an additional fee. Fee waivers are available for 11th and 12th grade students who qualify for free and reduced lunch through Pasco County Schools. College Board does provide SAT fee waivers for 2 separate tests. ACT provides fee waivers for 4 separate tests. So your student could receive up to 6 free tests between 11th and 12th grade in order to take these tests for free. Also, if your student uses a fee waiver to test during high school, then they can also apply to college for free. There are college application fee waivers that they can get if they do use the test fee. All right, so test dates. Currently, these are test dates for this school year. As you can see, there are several test dates that have already passed, but there are still a few left for this school year. So upcoming, we have March 9th, May 4th, and June 1st for SAT. Please be aware of the registration deadlines, both registration and late registration deadline. If you do register after the registration deadline, but prior to the late registration deadline, you will incur an additional late fee. For ACT, these are the test dates for this school year. As you can see, of course, some test dates have already passed, but we do have 3 upcoming test dates. April 13th, June 8th, and July 13th would be your upcoming test dates. Again, there's registration deadline and a late registration deadline, so just be aware of those deadlines so you don't incur a late. All right, remember to register early to reserve your spot. Locations do have a cap on how many students they can have tests on each Saturday. So make sure that you register sooner rather than later so that your student can register for the test date and location that best fits them, because certain areas do fill up quickly and there's only so many spots at each location. Right, well, that is the end of our presentation, but I know I see a few questions here in the chat. So I'll go ahead and get here.
April, I do not have any on my end, so none that were sent to me directly. So whatever you have on yours.
Okay, I would say the one question, how can I get a copy of the recording of this session? So the presentation will be posted on the district website. I think we replied to that one, but yes, this presentation will be posted on the district website.
Yes, they should look under the College and Career Fair webpage.
Okay.
I did just get another quick question. If you could one more time explain the concordance scores, that sometimes gets confusing.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that slide so we can have that to reference. Okay, so graduation requirements for every student in the state of Florida. They must pass the grade 10 FSA ELA test, and they must pass the Algebra 1 EOC. If a student does not pass these 2 specific tests, they can sub in a score from another test that we believe is comparable so that they can meet those graduation requirements for testing. So if the student has not passed the grade 10 FSA ELA test, they can use either the ACT with a score of a 17.5 or the SAT reading section with a score of a 480. If they have not passed the Algebra 1 EOC, they can use the ACT math section and get a 16 or higher in order to sub in for that Algebra 1 EOC score. Or for the SAT, they can get at least a 420 or higher on the math section in order to substitute in for that Algebra 1 EOC. So this is specifically for juniors and seniors who have already taken these 2 tests, being the grade 10 FSA ELA and the Algebra 1 EOC, and have not passed them, even with taking them multiple times. So they can use ACT or SAT to substitute for those test scores. Okay, so I do have another question that was sent directly to me. Do students take the SAT in high school, or are they only available by registering on a Saturday? So all of the test dates that I shared are Saturday test dates. Generally, students who are taking ACT or SAT for college purposes and for scholarship purposes, they are going to take them on a Saturday. They are given in school on an occasional basis, but usually the ACT school day tests or the SAT school day tests are usually non-college reportable, meaning that they are giving those to students just to meet the graduation requirements. They are not going to be college reportable. So a non-college reportable test usually means that students are given additional accommodations, usually meaning additional time that therefore makes it a non-college reportable test. So yes, usually students need to take an ACT or SAT on a Saturday in order for it to be a college reportable test. Okay, another question I had was, is there a specific number of times students should take either test for college reporting? There is not a specific number of times. My general rule of thumb is students should start taking it in the fall of their junior year. They should take one ACT and one SAT before Christmas break, compare their scores, see which one they did better on. Usually students do better on one versus the other, but we don't know that for your specific student until they've taken both tests and they can compare their scores. So once they compare their scores, then they should take that test a second, if not third or fourth time, in order to get the best scores possible. The highest score always trumps. So when you are submitting scores to colleges or scholarship applications, they're always going to look at your highest test score.
If my child has a 504 plan, and includes extended time, you had just mentioned that extended time, is that
no, that does not apply. So if a student has an IEP or a 504 and they apply for accommodations and one of those accommodations happens to be extended time, that is still a college reportable test.
Okay, great.
When I said that if they get extended time during a school day test, I'm saying like all students get extended time, and that is not an approved accommodation. So therefore, that's why those tests during the school day, where everyone receives additional time, that's why that is not a college reportable test. Okay, another question I have, do all colleges accept super scoring? As to my knowledge, yes, all colleges and universities, especially in the state of Florida, do accept super scoring. I do not know of any specific school that does not accept super scoring. So I would definitely check with your school specifically that your student may be applying for, especially if they're out of state or out of country. But I know that state of Florida, yes, they all accept super scoring.
Okay, one more question. The PSAT, their scores that are on there, they haven't had, for example, the algebra or the advanced math courses.
Correct. The PSAT is a different test. It is the preliminary SAT, and it is not on the same level as the SAT. So that test is specifically intended for students who are 10th grade and under. Usually students take that in 8th, 9th, or 10th grade. So that content is specific to students who are usually in Algebra 1 or possibly in geometry. But the SAT is really specifically for students who are at the end of their high school journey that have already completed Algebra 1, geometry, possibly even completed Algebra 2 in order to score appropriately on the SAT.
Yeah, and I did notice that some of the subject matter in the SAT, it had said, you know, I think it was statistics.
Yes.
Reference that. So if they haven't taken statistics yet, how much does that affect them?
So I would say it really depends on your student, if that is their strength or weakness. Also, that's why I encourage them to take it multiple times throughout high school, because what their math knowledge may be at the beginning of 11th grade may be different from what it is halfway through their senior year. So I don't believe it should make a huge impact, but also, you know, the more knowledge and the more time they've had in math courses, the better they should do.
Okay, because right now she's 10th grade, finishing up Algebra 2. And she
So
hasn't picked
in-
her next course yet.
Mhm.
Should she be picking a particular next?
So I would say if a student is in Algebra 2 in 10th grade, more than likely they will go to AP Pre-Calculus in 11th grade. They could also choose to go to Probability and Statistics Honors, but that's really going to be based on your student and what they're, planning on doing in college. Are they going more of the STEM route, or are they going to a non-STEM major?
Non-STEM.
So
Math is not her
if it's-
favorite thing.
If it's a non-STEM major, then I would say probability and statistics, and then their senior year AP statistics. But there's lots of different options for after probability and statistics. But I would say if she's already in Algebra 2 in 10th grade, she is well on her way. So she shouldn't have too much problem.
Okay, thank you.
I did have another question. Do PSAT scores count to fulfill graduation requirements? No. PSAT scores do not count for graduation requirements because the PSAT is intended for students who are in 10th grade or under. So that specifically is not a test that can meet graduation requirements.
All right. Well, it's 8:03. If you don't have any other questions, April, I don't have any other on my end. I did get some feedback that this presentation was great and it was appreciated.
Sure.
So if there are no other questions, we can end for the evening.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much for your moderatingness.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you everybody for attending. And
Sure.
thank you, April, for presenting.
All right. No problem. Thanks, Nicole. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.